All of those stories later on, but first, the big discussion tonight. An overnight fire in London has killed at least 6 people and it sent more than 64 people to local hospitals. Many of those people are now in critical condition. Now, no word on what sparked that fire in London, but many say they are still in shock. Here's a report. This residential apartment in London is still billowing with smoke. Tucked away at Lancaster West Estate in North Kensington, those who live here and managed to escape say they're still in shock.
All bits were flying off of the flats, all the plastic cladding was coming off. I was looking up and I could see little kids at the windows banging and screaming, flashing lights. So it was like something out of a horror movie.
People were screaming, everyone was running downstairs, all the police was shouting at us to get out, evacuate, and it was just dramatic. It was honestly like the worst thing ever.
The massive blaze required more than 200 firefighters and 40 fire engines to control the block fire. The 24-story building, Grenfell Tower, quickly caught fire in the early morning hours, shortly after midnight local time. Many people were trapped on the upper floors and shouting for help. Around 200 people called this apartment block home. Some people threw out their kids out the window in a desperate attempt to save them, while others tied a rope out of bed sheets, doing what they can to escape.
I heard some people said help from the 20 floors, 19s. They are flashing the lights and now they stop. I don't know what happened to them.
30 nearby flats were also evacuated. Rescue crews and engineers have tested the apartment block and say it is not in danger of collapsing. No word on what started the fire, but police and the city's mayor say the death toll will rise. Bureau Report, WION. All right, to get more perspective on this story, we head straight to WION's bureau chief in London, Mandy Clark, to talk about this. Mandy, you were there on the ground in Kensington where all of this unfolded. It's been a little bit more than 12, 13 hours now. What was the mood like there? I mean, what were people saying? Really hard to look at those images and, figure out anybody was able to escape those burning flames.
You know, many of the people who were there, they were standing there. They just seemed unable to move. Many of them were residents, and they just stared at the burning building, absolutely in shock. What they've described as things that no one should have seen. They described people banging on the windows, begging for help, desperate to get out, and they simply could not help them. The flames were all over the building, what sounds within minutes. So a lot of people seemed shell-shocked and traumatized. There was a boy who must have been in his teens who found out a loved one had died, and he was in floods of tears. It is a community and residents absolutely in shock and trauma, and seeing people being thrown out windows. One man on fire jumping out of his building out of complete desperation. These were the scenes that were described. Absolutely upsetting scenes, but yet the residents could not leave. They felt like they couldn't leave the scene. Many of them just stood standing by, just watching it burn.
Absolutely. Just watching those pictures, even now, watching them, in disbelief. It looks like what happened during 9/11, where people were just trapped inside those Twin Towers. In fact, let's listen into one survivor who recounts his harrowing ordeal.
Well, it's completely gutted, burnt out, the whole block is. About 1:30 this morning, I was dozing off, I was going to sleep. My girlfriend was fast asleep, the little girl was fast asleep next door. And just as I was dozing off, I smelled plastic. So I thought, hang about, there's a Kindle next door, so I thought it might have been that, but it's overheating. So I've jumped up, turned all the plugs off, there's nothing going on. So I've gone into the kitchen, had a fag because I'd woken up now. I've opened the window up, and I could hear someone shouting, it's getting bigger, but I couldn't see nothing. But I could smell the smoke getting even worse. So I've gone to the front door, I've looked through the spy hole, and there was just smoke everywhere. I've opened the door up to go out into the hallway, and all the neighbours were screaming. And fire alarm was going off, but it was very low. It weren't going to wake no one up. If anyone was in a deep sleep, there's nobody going to wake up. And then I've grabbed the little girl, got to her first, stuck her under my dressing gown because of the smoke, got my girlfriend up and ran down the stairs. There was people outside with bags of clothes. They give me some trousers to put on, a shirt to put on. And now we're here trying to get rehoused and sorted out and just praying to God that there ain't too many fatalities. On a scale of 1 to 10, it was an 11. It was an inferno. It was like something out of a film. all bits were flying off of the flats, all the plastic cladding was coming off. I was looking up and I could see little kids at the windows banging, screaming, flashing lights. So it was like something out of a horror movie.
And what about the state of your flat?
I haven't been back up there yet, but from the outside, every you can say it was burnt right throughout everything we own in there's gone. You know, everything you can see from Latimer Road when you look up, you can see our flat is gone.
All right, now another relative shares his concern and recounts talking to them while still being trapped inside the building. He was outside. Police told him it was just simply too dangerous for him to step inside because of all those flames. Let's listen in.
She was actually saying, "Are you guys coming? Are you guys coming? Are you guys coming?" I was like, yeah, we're coming, because when we went to get the shield from the police van, I thought, yeah, they're going up there to get them down. I don't know whether they did or not, because I was stopped to go in the building, you know. And I said to her, they're coming for you, they're coming to get you. I don't know if they did. I don't know.
Just crossing fingers now that your cousin got out okay.
Yeah, I hope so, because I just hope she's still alive.
She has a 2-year-old son who's in the apartment with her.
Yes. And at one time the son collapsed, obviously because of the smoke. And she was saying, Jeremiah, it's not breathing. I'm like, okay, give him the kiss of life. Give him the kiss of life, you know, and just try to kiss his, blow breath in him, and then compress his chest, so he can breathe. And can you imagine the mother and the son, you seeing your son like that? You know, it's very painful, very painful.
Just heartbreaking to hear some of those reports and those eyewitnesses describing what they saw after that huge inferno. In fact, smoke is still billowing out this hour. Let's go back to Mandy Clark in London. Mandy, we also heard reports that apparently there was no fire alarm that sounded. Perhaps there weren't even sprinklers there, so making it very difficult trapping many of those people who perhaps were asleep since it happened in the early morning hours.
That is one of the big questions that's going to come out. Why was it so woefully inadequate to deal with a fire? No sprinklers. That was one thing that we did hear. We also heard that there was no fire alarms in that communal area. So if those valuable seconds to wake up people, alarm them, get them out of the building, those were lost. Also, there was only one fire escape, and there's hundreds of people in this building at any given time. So, there was in many measures there was simply not adequate. And we also heard from the Residents Association that the fire safety equipment had not been up to spec. It hadn't been tested in 4 years. Now that's according to the Residents Association, and that will all come out in the investigation. But if this is all proved to be true, it creates a damning body of evidence that simply this building was ripe for a catastrophe, for a fire, because there were so many procedures that seem to have gone unnoticed, neglected, ignored.
Mandy, at this point, though, a lot of people still displaced. I mean, you look at that, it pretty much doesn't look like anybody can go back and live there. Have groups come forward now to help some of those people who did survive or those who lost loved ones? What's the sort of the next steps going forward as that investigation goes on? But what happens to those people who live there and the surrounding areas in Kensington?
Well, lots of incredibly kind neighbors have offered shelter to those who have lost their homes, but the council has set up an emergency relief shelter as well in churches and places of worship. They have a lot at the center. They were giving away clothes, they were giving away food, just to give those really basic needs, because many people lost absolutely everything. So the council, the local authority essentially, is providing all those emergency aid, the shelter, food, clothing. But in long term, they will need somewhere to stay. And the other thing is trauma and grief counseling. What they saw was out of a war zone. So a lot of people are damaged, badly affected. These are not even the people who are in critical condition, and there's quite a number of people who are in critical condition. So it is a bit like a disaster zone. It's considered a major incident involving the police, the ambulance services, the fire department. All emergency services were on hand, and they will continue to be working throughout, likely the night, trying to get that building under control, safe, and continuing scouring, doing that recovery operation. I spoke to one counterterrorism officer who has been involved in mass casualty events, and he said in many ways he doubts there's any survivors left. This is simply a recovery operation.
All right, Mandy, we're going to come to you in just a moment, but just days, in fact, before the fire, residents, in fact, complained that we were at risk. In fact, some of the Residents Action Group also warned about the fire dangers and said there was a fire hazard, warning the landlord, saying that it was all unattended for years and there were safety norms that were ignored. Witnesses say that parents also threw out some of their kids to save them. Some even tied ropes from the bed sheets, tried to do what they can to really escape that fire. The episode brings about a huge question at this point. A, could this fire have been prevented? B, was it accident or was it neglect? I mean, Mandy, that's the big question that everybody's wondering. Certainly the mood of shock, but also could all of this just been avoided if there was perhaps some level of introspection done before? I mean, this report coming out, where do we see all of this developing?
Well, there will be a long, detailed and forensic investigation. I got a bit more of a background on what will be involved. First, the fire department will take control. They will work in tandem with the police, really looking at the cause of the fire and also the spread. Why did it spread so quickly? What safety measures should have been in place and weren't. But this building apparently had the fire safety regulations approved recently. So it's how rigorous were those checks in those fire safety? Was it just a tick in the box, or did someone actually go around physically make sure that it was up to standard? So all this will be deeply investigated, and it will take over a year for this investigation to be fully resolved. Although there will be updates throughout, it's likely only the next update in months to come. So they do plan to take their time and fully investigate it. But there's immediate anger by the residents that they strongly felt on the street, some of them, that it was neglect, that it should never have gone up so quickly. They already think someone made a terrible mistake for whether it's the cladding. That's what a lot of people spoke about, that new cladding in the refurbishment to improve the look of the building. They felt that had led the fire race up to the top and engulf the building. Of course, we don't know just yet. The investigation is ongoing, but there is certainly a lot of speculation and a lot of anger, deep hurt among the residents. They want to know what happened, and they want answers a lot sooner than a year.
Absolutely. People are wanting more answers, especially after this deadly catastrophe. Lastly, Mandy, you talked about that area, Kensington. Give us some perspective on that area for our international viewers. And I know it's still early. We don't know the reason why this fire started. Was it arson? Was it accidental? Was it perhaps a short circuit? A million things that could have gone wrong. But certainly the devastation felt with those horrific images. So talk to us about that area and perhaps what investigators are going to do as we wrap this up.
So the area itself is quite nice. It's Kensington. It's in the borough of Chelsea and Kensington. Those are well-known areas, very middle class. The building itself is what they call a council building, which is essentially the state provides housing for people. However, some of those buildings were privately owned, but they would have been former people who needed assistance from the state. So the people themselves wouldn't necessarily have been very well to do, but it's in a very nice area, and it's a very built up area. It's not quite central London, but it's on the doorstep to the heart of London, very much in the heartland of London. So many houses all around the area. There's a flyover, the A40, which was closed in both directions. The tube lines were closed as well. That pass through the area. So it was a complete shutdown of the entire area because of this massive fire, and it really speaks to the scale of devastation that we saw today. So the area is quite nice. The people themselves were likely didn't have a lot of means to begin with, so they will be really struggling with food, shelter, accommodation. And the council will be in full emergency mode, trying to provide as much support to these people. And of course, there are quite a few people, let's not forget, in those hospitals, some of them in critical condition.
All right, Mandy Clark getting us the very latest there from London on this story. Mandy, keep working your sources. Certainly our thoughts and prayers go with the family for this horrific situation there. 6 people killed, dozens others sent to the hospital. Mandy, thanks for all of those perspectives and insights.